Hello, it's Dr. Stephen Cangiano. I am the president and co-founder of RDT.Media and Events with its online companions, relationship-development.com and humanity-upgrade.com. It is an unbelievable pleasure today that we're getting to speak with Dr. Joel Fuhrman. He is a fellow New Jerseyan, as well as, listen to this, a 6-time New York Times #1 bestseller. He's a board-certified family physician, nutritional researcher. He serves as the president of the Nutritional Research Foundation. Dr. Fuhrman has authored numerous research articles published in medical journals, is on the faculty of Northern Arizona University Health Science Division. His 2 most recent books are Eat to Live, Quick and Easy Cookbook, and The Fast Food Genocide. I have to say, you have to go to his website because the resources, the layout, the professionalism is really, I see websites all day, really amazing. Dr. Fuhrman, thank you for joining us. Did you have anything to add to that introduction?
Well, thanks so much for having me on, and a pleasure to speak with you and all the people that follow and listen to this podcast, or all the people that view this, because my mission is to tell people that they don't have to be sick, as simple as that. That don't be diabetic and be diabetic. Get rid of it. Don't take medications to control it. Get rid of your diabetes. Don't have high blood pressure. Live your life. Get rid of to normalize your blood pressure so you don't need medications anymore. And there's no such thing as an overweight person who's healthy. Fat on the body is lipotoxic. It secretes hormones that increase the risk of cancer, including excess estrogen and angiogenesis promoters. And you know what? That nutritional science has advanced where we can win the war on cancer today. And we can afford people the opportunity to live to be 100 years old in great health with their full mental faculties intact. So what I'm just saying here is that it's crazy not to take advantage of nutritional excellence. And I'm really excited about making this more available to people and letting them know that they can control their health destiny.
You know, and everything you do, all your articles, I've had the opportunity to read many of them, your books, your website is really congruent with that message, as well as you as a person, so it's really exciting to have you. As you were saying that, I was thinking about my foot surgery days, and I'll give you an example of what you're talking about. We'd have a patient come in the office who was maybe 100 pounds overweight. They were diabetic, getting diabetic medicine. They were arthritic, getting arthritis medicine. And then the foot, they would actually have a heel spur or a heel pain. Now, the heel pain was due to their overweight, okay? Their feet were normal function. We would then give them an injection to alleviate the pain rather than encouraging them to change their lifestyle. And a lot of different medical specialties, I think, are enabling disease rather than helping to cure disease like you're doing. Does that fit with what your understanding is?
Absolutely, and I'd love to comment on that because, give you an example. This is what I come across all the time. For example, this guy Dan, he goes to his podiatrist, and the podiatrist tells him he needs to amputate his foot. Amputate the guy's foot due to chronic infections that could become gangrene. So the guy, and he doesn't give him any other option, has to have his foot cut off. So Dan starts crying, hysterically crying in the podiatrist's office, not wanting to lose his foot. So the podiatrist then says to him, you know what? There's a guy downstairs named Steve. This is at Kaiser Permanente, by the way. A guy downstairs named Steve. And Steve lost 80 pounds on Dr. Fuhrman's Nutritarian program. And these people, and he reversed his diabetes. If you don't want to lose your foot, maybe that could help you. Just maybe it might work. Who knows? Might as well try it if you want to just hold off on amputating your foot a little bit. So he goes down to see Steve. And of course, the guy loses about 100 pounds and gets rid of his diabetes, becomes non-diabetic, saves his foot, and becomes a healthy person that's now involved in his life anymore. The point of the story was, if he didn't start crying hysterically, his foot was going to come off. The doctor wasn't going to even mention the fact that there was another option nutritionally to get better. And at least the guy finally got there. But this happens every day across America, where people are having gastric bypass, coronary artery bypass surgery, angioplasties, amputations, dialysis. They're getting human tragedies happening to people's lives, and nobody's interceding and giving them informed consent and tell them that didn't have to happen. You could have made a complete recovery. And if you were willing to make the changes in your diet necessary, you could have be non-diabetic and you wouldn't have to have a stroke or a heart attack in your future. And I don't object to doctors doing what they do, but I object to them not giving people the alternative choice that they could have gotten well, because the advances in nutritional science over the last 2 decades means we have proven studies in the scientific literature showing that even advanced heart disease is reversible, and stents don't make you live longer. And diabetic medications do not make you live longer. Most of them cause weight gain and accelerate the rate at which your diabetes progresses. And the ACCORD study, which was sponsored by the NIH, had to be stopped because the people getting more medical care, more medication to better control their glucose, were dying at a faster rate. And they found less medical care, less glucose control was better for their health. Now, I'm not saying I agree with less glucose control, but the point is it's the drugs given for the excess medical care that cause the problem. It's better to control your glucose, but with diet and exercise, not with drugs. And not only do drugs accelerate the disease process and the pathology, and as you mentioned, they enable people to think they're okay. So they're permission slips. Instead of prescription pads, they call them permission pads, which enable people to keep living the diet style and lifestyle that caused the problem to begin with. But additionally to that, most of the drugs increase risk of cancer. So when you're on a calcium channel blocker for 10 years, studies show it doubles the risk of breast cancer. When you're on a statin drug for 10 years, it increases risk of breast cancer about 40%. We're talking about that these drugs have serious side effects that are not discussed. People are not getting informed consent. And if they knew all the details, if they knew their stent placements are not going to decrease their chance of a future heart attack, if they knew the drugs are going to increase their risk as opposed to decrease the risk, and they knew there was a legitimate alternative that works and that can taste great and you're going to like, and you're going to add 15 to 25 years to your life and not have to be going back as a medical cripple your whole life. I mean, you'd have to be crazy not to avail yourself of this opportunity that modern nutritional science makes available to people.
Yeah, it's true. I love your congruency around the issue. And you're right. Medicine tends to be an enabler. Obviously, if there's a crisis, traditional medicine steps in, gets people through the crisis, but then they have to change their lifestyle. All right, good segue. I love the term Nutritarian. And then you also talk about maximizing health span and lifespan. Can you define those 3 terms for us, please?
Sure. Now, what I'm talking about here is I coined this word Nutritarian to represent the diet style and lifestyle I recommend, which has to do with eating a diet that has a high nutrient per calorie density and is utilizing the foods with a documented efficacy that prevent cancer and extend human lifespan. We know how to design a diet to make it ideal, and we have to be very comprehensive in looking at all the aspects of everything that affects human lifespan and maximizes health in our later years. When we do that, we have a Nutritarian diet, but I have to say that the most proven methodology to slow aging and extend human lifespan, and people could write this down, because it's extremely important. It's moderate caloric restriction in an environment of micronutrient excellence. Now, what I'm saying here is that moderate caloric restriction, eating a little less calories to maintain a favorable weight and getting the extra fat off a body is critical for maximizing your lifespan. Absolutely critical. But you have to have micronutrient excellence as you're doing that. So we have to eat a lot of foods that have a high micronutrient per calorie density. And we have to have comprehensively address the full spectrum of nutrients humans need at the same time. Now, what I'm also saying, I'm saying the opposite is what makes it work. Because when you achieve micronutrient excellence and fully comprehensive micronutrient adequacy, covering all the aspects of all nutrients humans need, it naturally suppresses the appetite, and you don't desire to eat as many calories or to eat excess calories. And what I'm saying here is that food addiction and an unrelenting drive to overeat calories occurs because people's diets are micronutrient insufficient. So this works hand in hand. A person from great soils, a lot of high micronutrient food, the brain, which is made up fat gets rancid and it causes depression, and the dopamine receptors become insensitive, and you got to become a food consuming animal, and you can't stop eating, and your life is driven by meeting your needs for calories and frankenfoods and highly, foods that are too sweet and too salty and too oily and too greasy and too calorically dense. You can't control your health, and you give up because you think it's insurmountable to get rid of your addictions. But the way we achieve that and get through that is because when we flood the body with all these protective nutrients and lower the level of toxicity in the tissues, especially reactive oxygen species, and reduce advanced glycation end products, people start feeling great. The mental fog lifts. Their addictions are lost, and they no longer have the drive where they have to overeat food just to not feel fatigued. They're not tied to overeating food all the time as a means of keeping their energy up and feeling okay. So what I'm saying is it all works hand in hand. The same foods that prevent cancer also enable you to control your appestat, number one. And number two is that if you're dieting and doing anything right, it's not going to be good for you no matter what you do in the short run. The only thing that really works to have a great health span and a great lifespan is to make these changes permanently. And eating to prevent cancer is the only successful way to lose the weight and keep it off for the rest of your life, because the change you make in your diet has to be maintained forever. So you change your diet to be as healthy as you possibly can, and then we teach people how to make it taste fantastic, how to make them enjoy it. And as they lose their addictive attraction to those foods, they learn the recipes, but their taste changes, and they learn to prefer these recipes and the foods that are healthy for them compared to the foods they used to like. So their taste preferences change, and they don't lose pleasure of eating. They gain more pleasure from eating, and they get their health back in the process. So that's really been developed and essentially proven. You follow me?
Yeah, so it sounds like a win-win-win situation. Let me break that down a little bit. I do have one question. A book that when I was working in the wellness industry in the city, that was one of my favorite books. Maybe you can comment it really well. It's the 120-Year Diet by Roy Wolfer, the Calorie Restriction, Optimal Nutrition. It seemed a bit draconian. People had trouble following it. It sounds like your situation is much easier to follow. Just can you draw some distinction there? And also, I like the word you used, appestat. I've never heard it, and maybe you could define that, and then we can talk health span versus lifespan, which I think is important for people.
Yeah, I know. I didn't really answer your question about the health span versus lifespan. I got so much into things to explain and to talk about here. But yeah, of course that Roy Wolford was right about the fact that we should be living to be 100 years old, and I think that our average age has a wide bell. I mean, the average age is around 78 to 80, but that means the bell is wide, which means people die at 60 and 90, but they're all over the place.
Right.
And when we establish nutritional excellence, we narrow the bell. So we don't just shift it 20 years later, so the average age becomes around 100. We make it so even people with worse genetics live to be 95, and people with better genetics live to be 105. I know what I'm saying right now. Even so, we narrow it so we don't see people dropping dead and getting in nursing homes in their 60s and 70s or losing it. So and their health span. In other words, what good is it to be on the American diet? People say, I'll just die younger. I'm okay dying at 80 or 75. Well, number one, there's no guarantee of that. You could die at 60 or 65 too. And number two, I always say the food doesn't taste that good once you're in the coffin. Right. The other thing we're talking about here is that the 10 years before people die, that's not a good quality of life. They don't have their health span. They don't have their full mental faculties. They're not mobile. They're not athletic. They can't travel. They can't enjoy their life. And they're suffering a lot under the medical care, which is uncomfortable and sometimes torturous. So being in a hospital, being tortured in the last years of your life is not the idea of what I want for my life. I want to die peacefully at home and feeling good right up into the time where I'm getting sick. So we're talking about the word healthy life expectancy and health span, which is the worst in the United States compared to almost every modern industrialized country. And it's getting worse because the frankenfoods and the fast foods are fueling a continually growing obesity epidemic. And now the people that were raised on this fast food diet since they were kids are now reaching adulthood, and the amount of suffering is just insurmountable. It's just incredible. We have people, dying every 30 seconds, but they suffer so much. They're before they die. So we're talking here about not just living longer, increasing lifespan, but having a better life and enjoying your life, truly making the last 10 years of your life golden years that you can enjoy, not years of suffering that most Americans have to go through.
Yeah. And it really is it is an insurmountable, unbelievable amount of end of life suffering.
Right.
That's by and large unnecessary. And so I totally agree. All right. Well, you have to have some insight into this issue. And because I do want to talk about your retreat. But before we do that, in your opinion, and we talked about this a little bit of our preamble, why is it so hard for people to change their eating habits and behaviors? And I know you're an expert at doing this. Give us some insight into that. How can people do it?
Right. That's really my specialty, is taking away the obstacles and making this delicious and doable and making this the diet people prefer to eat. You know, Roy Walford had a great idea, but he couldn't make it practical for people. He couldn't make it taste good. He couldn't explain how people recover from addiction. He couldn't make people prefer to eat this way. So we had the concept, but not the way to make so people could practically and do it to make it really stick in their lives and enjoy it. You follow me? You know, so.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, that was the big problem, is that it was so draconian, so difficult. People didn't follow it, and then it kind of lost its steam there. But I think people like yourself are picking up the good parts of it and making it practical, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. And your question refers to the fact, I'm just shifting left because the sun is moving, and I didn't put a piece of paper up on that window, so I don't want to get the sun shift. So I may be shifting over this way a little bit. You know. But anyway, yes, and we're talking here right now about how difficult change is for people, and how food, especially the concentrated calories, because many people know what the word glycemic load means. It means how fast the carbohydrate is converted into the bloodstream, travels into the bloodstream and as sugar, how fast it enters the bloodstream. And the higher the glycemic load, the more sugar coming into the bloodstream more rapidly, has a heightened insulin response. And insulin is a fat storage hormone that accelerates fat growth and also promotes cellular replication and cancer. So the sweet diet not only causes cancer and accelerates fat growth, but it also stimulates dopamine in the brain. And the dopamine in the brain causes in the same way as if you had opiates. And your brain becomes dopamine insensitive, and you get cravings and drive to overconsume calories that can't be stopped. And just like the fat goes into the bloodstream, glycemic load, we have a fat-semic load, which is how fast fats and oils come into the bloodstream, also accelerate dopamine. So it's the rapid inrush of calories that people are using as a drug. And it affects, and drug addicts and food addicts can't think logically about what's best for their life. Their primitive brain is driving their behavior, and they can't be the full human they are. Plus, there's a link between depression and fast food and processed food and commercial baked goods. And even when these people are not depressed, they have what's called the dysthymic syndrome. It lowers their creativity and excitement about life, but it lowers your ability to make decisions based on logic and science and what's best for your own future. You can't think ahead to your future because you're just driven by the immediate release or the immediate pleasure of your addictive behavior. The point that I'm making right now is people need help in changing, because a lot of people can't do it on their own. And my career over the last 3 decades is trying to figure out and make and remove the obstacle in helping people understand why the addiction occurs, and training them emotionally and intellectually so they have the knowledge and the ability to make the recovery from these addictive behaviors, and to prefer eating the right amount of calories, and to feel like you're eating all you want, but you're satisfied with the amount of calories you're eating, and you also enjoy the taste. And so I want them to, so in other words, I follow my own recommendations, but I eat what I prefer to eat, what I like to eat, and the amount I want to eat. But what I prefer to eat, what I like to eat, and the amount I want to eat is the right amount, because I've trained myself, and because of this program works, and that's what we want to have happen for people. And that's why I developed my retreats, and my Eat to Live retreat, of course, set in a beautiful area of San Diego.
Before we do that, because you said some really, really important things that I want to make sure they bring home. And, we're both doctors, and we're like, sometimes people can get into the swamp with dopamine and that kind of thing.
Sure.
And we have some great resources about the neuroscience of this. And, there was fats and sugars were in short supply as we evolved as human beings. And so when we did find those resources in nature, we got a dopamine rush because that was important for our survival. But that feature has now become a bug in our present day because those things that were rare in the past are so common now. And I think you really get to the heart of the issue when you talk about that. And these elevated dopamine, cortisol, all these different levels decrease our brain function. Would you mind just expounding on that a little bit? Because that's an important piece that you got into for people. And I think people need to understand that better, that there's an evolutionary reason for this addiction to this fast food that you're really talking about. And if you could just get into a little more detail on that, because I think it's really important.
It is important. And I'm just going to shift my computer a little bit over a little more again because the sun's, I should have covered up with a whole window there. Yes, it is very important because food is powerfully addicting. And I think that if two things happened, if one, physicians really told people the true risks and the futility of taking drugs to control their symptoms, and people recognized that the change would be enjoyable, and they learned enough about the addictive model and how addictions work, they'd have the tools to get rid of their addictions. And they'd realize the discomfort over that first week is short-lived, and they're going to be able to conquer their addiction. It's not going to be as hard as stopping smoking or stopping cocaine, but there is going to be some discomfort that's going to occur for a period of time. And how long the emotional discomfort lasts after that, and how long it takes the taste buds to rechange to prefer the way you're eating. When people have proper information that they really feel works, they're not fearful and they can make the change. So what I'm saying right now, in answer to your question, that the addiction, the drive to continue to eat unhealthfully when you know you're overweight, you know you have a disease caused by what you're eating, people can't stop, is caused by a lot of different mechanisms in the body. One mechanism has to do with how the liver and the kidney work to detoxify free radicals and glycation end products, and other toxins like lipofuscin and urea and uric acid. In other words, when the body's taking in calories while you're in the anabolic phase of the digestive process, while you're digesting food, the liver really can't deconjugate and remove toxic waste products for elimination. And you're really not effectively getting rid of fat and breaking down tissue for removal in the anabolic or eating phase. That happens in the catabolic phase after digestion has ceased. Now, when you stop digesting food, now in the catabolic phase, you live off of the calories that were stored. But when you're burning those calories that were stored, that's when the body can effectively remove toxins and repair and get rid of more waste products. But because people's bodies are so nutritionally insufficient and so toxic, they feel too uncomfortable in the catabolic phase. They start to feel fatigued and shaky, mild withdrawal depression. They even start to feel sometimes headachy, or a little mild anxiety. So they don't feel comfortable not digesting food because the body is too toxic to tolerate the elimination that occurs in the catabolic phase of the catabolic cycle. Now, the longer you're in the catabolic cycle, the longer you're not digesting food, the longer you live, because it helps, because that's when most repair takes place, when you're not eating food. So you have two phases, the building phase and the repair phase. But people can't tolerate how they feel in the repair phase, so they have to keep eating all the time. So the minute digestive ceases, they start to feel a little woozy and feel fatigued and feel shaky, and they eat again, and they think that's hunger. So the first thing that eating unhealthy does is discombobulate your instinctual need for calories, so you feel only comfortable when you overeat and eat too much. But the second thing is, which we're talking about today also, was the stimulatory effect of foods on the brain and how the brain seeks out that stimulation. And that stimulatory process, or that stimulatory drive, takes away your desire to build relationships, to take care of your children, to work on your job, to create, to appreciate the world around you, to be creative, to be artistic, to be, in other words, your brain is so now possessed with meeting your need for stimulation that you can't be the full human with your full qualities. You can't be the full person you can be. And so it interferes with people's happiness, the quality of their life, the success of their life, and the relationships. And the more you become an addict, either drugs or food, the more it puts you in a prison where your dependency on substances drive your behavior, and you no longer have control of the bank.
Dr. Fuhrman, you are such a eloquent and congruent advocate for this. I'm really glad we're spending this time together. Let's break down a couple of those things there. Anabolic, catabolic. Anabolic is when you're taking in food, it's kind of like recharging the battery. Catabolic is when you break it down. And the reason I bring that up, just to make sure that people understand the medical, two doctors can get into a medical swamp here, which I don't want to, because we want this for everybody. You had an article that I read recently that had thousands in a day, thousands of views and reads in a day. It was about fasting. And I know you're an expert on this, and hopefully this is a good segue to talk about, because this has become really popular in the marketplace. Give us the good, the bad, and the ugly, the myth, the legend, how does fasting, or should fasting, fit into people's lives?
Okay, I'm somewhat hesitant to talk about it sometimes, because I want people to learn to eat in a manner that's consistently, that they stick with, that they learn how to do this. In other words, I'm bringing up my retreat again, because one of the things we do there is we want people that are overweight adjusting their meal size and their distance between the meals, so they lose approximately a pound every 3 days or a kilogram a week. That's the minimum weight loss we expect. Most people do lose 20 pounds or 25 pounds the first month and 15 to 20 the second month. But the people that really metabolic hindrance to weight loss or their metabolism is slowed, in other words, we still want them losing at least 2 pounds a week. And to answer the answer, I'm shifting my computer again. Sorry about that. Okay. So in any case, the point I'm making is that when people are overweight and they fast or they restrict their calories too much, then it could be counterproductive, because they're not going to stick with that long term, and their weight will yo-yo and they'll regain some weight. And it's okay to yo-yo your weight when you're at an ideal weight, and it's okay to fast when you're at your perfect weight, because when you're fasting below your ideal weight and coming back to your ideal weight again. In other words, if I have 11% body fat as a 65-year-old, that's pretty good. Now, I could do some lifespan enhancement that I'm not eating by skipping dinner or by taking some days off from eating. That would be okay for me, because I'm going to get my weight below my ideal weight. And then when my weight comes back to my ideal weight, I'm still not going to have a lot of extra fat stores in my body. But should I have been overweight, doing a fast would not be advisable, because I would have brought my weight down and I'd still be overweight when the fast was completed. And then when I gain weight back and my metabolic rate slows from the fast, the rapid regain of weight is not good. You're going to put mostly on visceral fat, and it's going to saturate your fat, and yo-yoing the weight is not a good idea. So the reason why I don't really want to talk about prolonged fasting for people who are overweight, only as a longevity tool for people at an ideal weight. But the other thing is that it is okay for people to go on a 2-meal-a-day program and narrow the window, time-restricted eating, where you eat a later breakfast and an earlier dinner, because that can accelerate and improve the metabolic parameters and accelerate a person's weight loss. And I'm okay with people doing that, but recognize that I want to get people into a process and consistency of practicing something they can stick with long-term. Because a lot of people have 50 to 100 pounds of weight to lose. And if they try these fads and they go too extreme, they're not going to keep on the program day after day, month after month. Give you a perfect example. Nicole comes into my facility. She weighs 350 pounds. She's there for 2 months and loses 50 pounds. But she's there for 2 months and loses 50 pounds. So I had a chance to train her, get rid of her emotional overeating, take care of her psychological needs, teach her the cooking techniques, have her train taste buds beat. So the time helped her. The year she was discharged or left, she lost 150 more pounds. She dropped 200 pounds in 1 year, and she needed to for it to save her life. She would have never have done that if she went to some health retreat for a week or two. And she would have never have done that if she went away to fast, because she would have dropped some weight with extreme restriction and bounced back slowing, and she wouldn't have had a consistent weight loss coming off at 15 pounds a month after that. You follow me?
Yeah, that is such an important distinction. We really have to get that out there, because everything becomes a fad, and then everybody thinks everything applies to everyone. So what you're saying, to close that loop there, is that if you're at or near your ideal weight, fasting can be a good tool for you, because what it does is it cleans out the system. You snap back to your ideal weight or close to it. But if you are obese, let's say your BMI is over, 34 in the higher range, then you're saying that it's really much more important to get them on that whole lifestyle transformation. And yeah, that's
right. The fasting is just going to fuel right into their addictions. because it's not enough time where they hadn't have enough abstinence from their addiction, where they've lost their triggers, foods are still going to trigger them. Their metabolic rate is going to be excessively slowed. They're going to bounce back their weight after the fast, and it's not going to result in a sustained benefit. We have to do, so it's not the right methodology to deal with most of these people's problems. And it could mess them up even, because we have to get them out of that instant reward mentality and adopt a program that can maintain long and learn how to make this program work for the rest of their life. They're always going to have a slow metabolic rate. They're always going to have that tendency to put weight on, and we've got to come up to a solution that's going to work for them long term.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's clear. You did say, just mention one more thing about, limiting the times of eating and that kind of thing. When is that important? How should that be instituted in a healthy way?
I think the most important message to get out of those comments is that it is never healthful, and it's not good for your longevity to go to bed on a full stomach. It's the most important thing to get out of that is eat an earlier dinner and go to bed at night on an empty stomach. Whether you're overweight or whether I'm doing it for my own health and longevity or for you yourself, is that finish dinner earlier. And some people call it intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, but we could just call it, don't go to bed with your stomach full, because you want to sleep and rest at night on an empty stomach, because you're going to live longer that way. And the studies have documented the dramatic efficacy of going to bed, of finished eating earlier and going to bed on an empty stomach at night and having that full physiological and physical and biological rest at night while you don't have food in your digestive tract.
Beautiful, beautiful. Helps you sleep better. There's multiple benefits.
Multiple benefits, right.
Multiple
metabolic benefits, all kinds of benefits.
Yeah, that. Now, I had a chance to online, unfortunately not in person, but I had a chance online to review your retreat in San Diego. It really is an unbelievable program. Give us some details on it. Then I want to talk about it a little bit.
Sure. It's been a dream of mine, actually, because, my frustration is because I feel that these superpowers you can give to people to reverse their disease, reverse their heart disease, reverse their diabetes, get back and save their lives, even reverse early stage cancers, but autoimmune diseases, those are so remarkable, to get people rid of fibromyalgia and lupus. I had a woman on a national renal transplant list who got well. People with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, so these autoimmune diseases are reversible too, with nutritional excellence and following these disease protocols. But the frustration is that the attraction of these addictive foods and the Franken foods in the American diet is people so often can't make the change on their own. So by me developing this retreat where people can come in for 4, 8, or 12 weeks, and believe it or not, I am encouraging an 8 to 12 week stay. I want people to stay in this facility a long time, especially when they have serious illnesses. When they work with me, it enables me to get them, off all their medications for blood pressure and diabetes, get them really take the time to fuel their body with the right nutrients, to give them the psychological counseling, to change their outlook on life and using food as for solace and loneliness and the fact that they've developed these patterns of eating. And people need time to be away from their addictions so they don't trigger back into addictive behaviors again. That's why they put people with cocaine addiction and narcotic addiction away at some kind of drug addiction place for 12 weeks to get well, because it reduces the chance of recidivism and then going back to drugs again. The same thing here with food. When people come into my retreat and I miraculously have them change their life and get rid of their diabetes and their chest pains go away, they don't need angioplasty or bypass surgery. I had 2 guys who came in just this September with unstable angina at rest. They made complete recoveries. It was just amazing.
Wow.
So the recoveries are amazing. And I'm saying the reason why it doesn't work so effectively, people go away to a health spa or a health place for a week or 2, is that it's not enough time for people to make the change stick. And, I have the most, the best soil in the world, the best chefs making the most delicious food. We teach, before people leave the retreat, they learned how to make the great recipes. They pick the ones they love. They know how to make them. They learn how to make it. But they got the right kind of therapy, both the physical therapy, the emotional therapy, the teaching, the education, the time, and they become such experts that they go home with the skills and knowledge to do this long term and to enjoy it. So it enables me to really assure their success. So I can take a person who's very seriously ill and take care of them myself with my, of course, medical staff and psychological staff and chefing and cooking. Not all me. I have myself and my staff can really make sure a person's going to do this with 100% perfection, make a complete recovery, and leave with the skills to maintain the benefits. And I keep following it up to make sure that happens. So I'm very excited about it because there's so many people who could not have achieved that transformation in their health without having this opportunity or without having this available. And it's so much fun for me. It's so rewarding because I just see people make this change and making sure I have all the things in place to remove their obstacles for that change. You follow me?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a beautiful place too. And that whole environment. And then we were talking in the preamble here about developing those resonant relationships where people feel like they can really count on you, count on the system, count on the people. I mean, I don't, as I sit here and I think about it, for some people who are really food addicted, severely obese, what else would work for them?
Right. I mean, as you know, on my shows on PBS, I've written books, and the book for them to read, of course, is The End of Dieting, is the book that I feel is most important for people who have chronic, overweight, emotional overeaters, chronically yo-yo their weight, try different diets to make one thing stick and stay with it the rest of their life. And some people could watch the videos, come to a weekend, read a book, watch videos online. They can they can join my website. And we've motivated thousands of people to make those changes. But for the people, but it doesn't work all the time. And people know there's a high degree of failure because they get the reinforcement from their local communities are sabotaging them. Their doctors are sabotaging them. And it's very hard for them to do that and have the knowledge and the ability to do it on their own. So what I'm saying is that we make sure that people who need to come in is a safe place that's really going to work for them. So it's what you're saying that even though you could do it on your own, and if you do the work and the reading and you really do the struggle and you have a strong personality and you stick through this, I want to give you the necessary knowledge and skills and that you need to do this on your own. And on my website, we have an Ask the Doctor forum where people can communicate with me and my staff. We have a Ask the Food Addiction Counselor part of the website. We enable people to be able to do this on their own. But so many people can't. And they're just not going to. They can't do it. It's too much of a struggle. It's too big of a hurdle for them. And we know why it's too big of a hurdle for them. There's lots of reasons why. But that's why they come to the retreat. And sometimes when they're sickly and then doctors aren't even working with them properly and wean them off their medications or to adjust the medications accordingly, they need to be there. And they need to have somebody, they need to have me working with them. Because look, let's take a person with lupus or with psoriasis. The doctor's not going to know how long to keep you on that medication. How to feed you, and then how to wean that down gradually so it's safe. And how do you prevent a flare-up when you do stop the medications? They don't have that skill when taking people off medications, knowing when to do it, how to do it, how to use the food in its place, what foods the psoriatic arthritis patient are going to flare up to. They don't have that experience. I've been doing this for 30 years. So it really enables me to take care of people in a way that's going to be much more effective for them.
Yeah, I mean, it really, let me reinforce this. You have the broad spectrum of resources for people who want to tweak their health, self-starters who want to get it done on their own. And then you have this retreat, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. People need to go online, take a look at it. If you feel like it's over and there's no help for you, this could be something that could really totally transform your life. Dr. Fuhrman, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you to come back on the video here because your knowledge, your congruency around the topic, your resources are phenomenal. More and more people need to hear about this, and we really, really appreciate your time. Is there anything in closing you wanted to say? Well, you also been great maneuvering the sun here with this, so you've been multitasking as we're doing it.
Right.
Is there anything else you wanted to add or say? We have your we have your links to your websites and all that kind of stuff. Anything else you wanted to say, add? Did we miss something that's real important?
I don't think you missed it. I think you got it all. I think my mission, just to reinforce what we've already said, and that people don't have to be sick, and that these nutritional excellence is 100 times more effective than medications. And the medications just make you sicker in most cases. and people are still suffering with the disease for the rest of their lives. So instead of suffering with psoriasis your whole life, taking medications that are chemotherapeutic agents that increase risk of cancer, get well from psoriasis. Divorce yourself from the need for medical care. The point is that people don't recognize that they can get well. Nobody's telling them they can make a complete recovery. And I'm offering that hope, but also the solution of how to make it work and how they can enable that. So I'm making it real for them, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. Not just the hope, but the practical knowledge and whatever support they need to make the transition and transformation. You're tremendous. Really, really phenomenal. Really appreciate your time being here. This is Dr. Stephen Cangiano, RDT.Media and Events, signing off. Thanks again, Dr. Fuhrman. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Best of health, of course, to you and all your listeners.